For this painting, we're going to be using some basic geometric shapes that you can find at any craft store. I've got a neutral background here that we can paint on and work with in mid-tone. For our colors on our palette, I want to keep it pretty simple so we can focus on the light and dark of the value. So I'm just going to add some white and black, and then maybe just a little bit of yellow and blue to give us some variety. So the first thing I want to do is sketch out our objects. A quick, simple sketch to figure out where on our canvas these objects will sit. For these larger lines, I'm using bigger arm movements. I'm using my shoulder and my elbow. We'll get more into linear perspective later and how to properly construct a three-dimensional cube, but for now we can keep it simple. Perspective isn't our main goal right now. So now that we've got a simple sketch, we can begin dividing the light from the dark. Let's start with our light side first. You want to pay attention to your light source and see where the strongest light is coming from. In this case, the left side is the lightest side of each object. So I'm going to go nice and bold, lay it right in. I'm not going to cover the entire object. Even though the object is white, I want to focus on the value right now. Now when we look at our cube, we have three visible sides. We've got the light side here facing our light. And we've got our dark side and then a mid-tone here. Each plane is going to be a different value. But now that we've got our basic light side blocked in, just add a touch more there, we can block in our light side. Excuse me, our dark side. And I grab some blue, darken it up with a little bit of black here so we get a nice, deep, rich, shadowy color. And we'll come in and lay that in on the dark side. The same with the dark side of our cube. Excellent, we're already on our way. We're starting to get some volume already. We've got a light side and a dark side. Now we've got a lot of mid-tones happening here, so I'd like to quickly address those. So let's mix up a neutral medium value here. So we can kind of cover this. I'm using a wider brush, lots of water to get quick coverage. If you use a small brush on this background, it'll take you hours to cover. So larger brush, nice fluid consistency to your paint, and you'll have this covered in no time. Okay, good. Now we still have this medium value on the top of our cube, so let's find that. I want to mix up just the right value here. right in between our light and our dark. And while it's on my brush, I'm going to go ahead, put in that mid-tone that separates our dark from our light on our cone. Now we've got a basic structure here. We've got our background, our light side, our dark side, and some midtones. Let's find some of those cast shadows now. The cast shadows are the shadows that the objects themselves cast onto the floor, the wall, each other. Now cast shadows start out darkest just at the base of our object. And as they come out from the object, they get a little bit lighter as more light enters into the shadow. So the shadow is just going to fall directly behind the object. And then gradually lighten up as it extends back. Let's find the division between the floor and the wall. And they're pretty similar in value, but we do want to separate them to make sure that we can tell the difference. What is the ground and what is the wall behind? Okay, so we've got our cast shadows on the floor. We've also got a cast shadow coming from the cone onto the cube itself. So we want to make note of that. Seeing how some objects interact with other objects through light and shadow is a great way to make a convincing painting of value and volume. And then finally, let's look at the wall behind here as I see the cast shadow of the cube against the wall. Great. Now that we've got everything blocked in, let's refine it. Let's switch to our smaller brush. And let's start pulling out some of those smaller details and those subtleties that help us capture the shine, the sheen, and the shadow. I'm going to come back in with my dark values. I'm going to look for those small, dark, shadowy shapes. I want to notice where the darkest parts of my setup are. And those are going to be right at the base of my objects. I really want to capture that shadow right there. Let's do the same for the cube. Nice and dark. A little bit here at our corner. Excellent. Now within our shadow areas, we want to identify the darkest part of the shadows and the lighter part of the shadows. It's not going to be all the same value. So within our cone here, we've got a light side and a dark side, but we do have light starting to come in on this side. So it's not lightest here, darkest here. It's actually darkest right through here, about 3/4 of the way from where I'm looking. So I'm going to darken this up quite a bit here. And then with our reflected light that's bouncing back in here, We'll lighten this up just a little bit. Great. Now let's look at our cube. It's not a uniform shadow all across the side. So I'm gonna pay attention, see, okay, it's a little bit lighter here, and as it recedes away from the light, it gets a little bit darker. So let's darken up this corner right here, the one that's furthest away from the light. I'm gonna blend that out. Let's add a little bit of a lighter part to this corner here. We'll let that blend out. So now we're starting to get a little bit of variety in each of our shadows. This cast shadow here is going to be a bit darker right here at the base. And as it fades up away from the light, it's going to get a little bit lighter. Let's do the same for this cast shadow here. Starts out dark, gets a little bit lighter. So we want to start seeing that nuance and that subtlety within the shadow shapes and the highlight shapes. That's what's going to give you some believability and make your shadows look convincing. Now, as we're tightening up here, I want to make sure to try to get rid of all of my outlines. We started out with an outline to identify our objects, but an outline is something that's really going to flatten out your painting. It's great for a cartoon, those strong dark outlines, but when you want to get convincing volume and make it look three-dimensional, those outlines are only going to hurt you. So now that our background is dry, let's come back in here and we can tighten everything up. Come right up to the edges here. That's what a flat brush is great for. We get that nice tight edge. We want to go right up to it with no line separating the object from the background. So we can use this to our advantage and come right up along the edge. Had a little bit of water in there, so we might get some dripping. No problem. I'm gonna feather this shadow just a little bit, lightly bring in the background. And then we can reestablish our objects down here as well. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Now, if I wanted to, I could spend a lot more time, little highlights and details, little sparkles here and there. But for our purposes now, I think this is doing a good job of showing how to capture the light side, the dark side, the cast shadows, the reflected light, to give your objects volume and three-dimensionality. If you've been practicing along with this lesson, you might already be surprised at how easy it is to create volume once you understand how light and space behave. It will only become easier the more often you do it. In upcoming lessons, we'll do a deeper dive into capturing light and the illusion of space. But for now, you should have all you need to begin creating objects that seem to jump right off the canvas.